Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you're tuning in from. We are so honored to have you this evening, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Welcome back to Get It Right with Atara Solutions, where we seek to demystify issues in entrepreneurship and employment. This is our 7th episode of season 2. So we have done season 1, which was 26 episodes. This is 7th episode of season 2, and we are very excited. Season 2 is brought to you by Atara Solutions in partnership with Balcon Housing and Stallion Construction Company Limited. My name is Grace Nzula. I am a trainer and HR consultant with Atara Solutions, an HR consulting and training firm that provides total HR solutions to employers and employees. At Atara Solutions, we help employees who are seeking to improve their performance in the workplaces and those looking for job placements. We also assist employers implement HR systems, upskill their human resource, as well as find good talent. I am also a manager at Panessa Training Institute, a carpentry school. So Get It Right with the Atara Solutions is a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in entrepreneurship and employment. This is, in case you have missed any of our sessions, kindly visit our YouTube channel, Get It Right with Atara Solutions. And while at it, kindly subscribe. Allow me to just let you know why we started this series. Did you know that 22% of businesses fail in the first year, 30% in the second year, 50% in the 5th year, and 70% don't actually see their 10th anniversary? It really takes a lot for someone to start a business, and it really takes a lot for you to run it throughout a period of time. And as you can see, imagine after all the hard work, and within 10 years, your hard work is gone. So this is why we're trying to inform people, because I believe knowledge is power. And part of the reason why the businesses fail is because of lack of information. Can you imagine? So as always, I would like to introduce our partners. We have Kapula Mintito, which is an online shop based in Mombasa that sells mostly coastal goodies that are not only yummy to the palate, but nutrient dense. 2, we have cashew nuts, raw, plain, roasted, and salted, the works. If you're a fan of cashew nuts, kindly speak to Kapula Mintito. They also have baobab powder, mbirimbi, raw almonds, organic honey, and sweets such as flavored mabuyu, achari, and dates. So if you're looking for that, you know, when we go to Mombasa, or if you're coastarian, and you know that mabuyu from Costo is different, it hits different. Anyway, they also offer shop for you services and run errands for people, whether in Kenya or outside Kenya, at a small fee. You can check out their page, Kapula Mintito, on Instagram and Facebook for more information. We appreciate our media partners, Graphics Broadcast Media, who have been with us for a while now. By the way, this session is actually live on Facebook, Atara Solutions, in case you drop off and you can't join in because of technology. So we are live on Facebook. Today's session is brought to you courtesy of Balcon Housing, a real estate company that was incorporated in the year 2001. The company has successfully sold many parcels of land in different parts of the country. They provide both residential and commercial land for investors, individuals, and groups. They also offer property management services. So if you have a flat somewhere, or you want to put up a building, or even you have just a place you're collecting rent, you can speak to them. They'll manage your property for you. If you're looking for land to invest, either for commercial or private, whatever it is you want to do on a piece of land, please speak to Balcon Housing. I am honored and privileged to introduce our speakers of the day. By the way, if you look at your screen, we have a sign language interpreter. Just let me do what technology requires of me so that she can be seen. There you go. All right. Yes, Pamela, I said Mbirimbi. Yes, it is Mbirimbi. You can talk to me. I will let you know what that means. So allow me to just introduce our guests this evening, and allow me to start on with our sign language interpreter. And I hope that for those who have hearing impaired, whatever they call it. Sorry, apologies. You can be able to see her on your screen. So her name is Nkaziri Id. She is a dedicated professional sign language interpreter. She's the co-founder of ASCPA, a CBO that advocates for the rights of children and youth with disability. She believes in changing the world by identifying early one's identity so as to inform your destiny. She has extensive experience as a sign language interpreter in the legal system, advocacy programs, and in the education sector. As a highly motivated advocate for PWCs, especially the deaf, she has proven track record of providing consultancy in sign language, as well as expert advocacy and research on matters affecting and enhancing the life of the deaf. Her strong drive in uplifting the and empowering PWDs is rooted in the fact that she is born of the widowed deaf mother. This developed the urge and personal conviction on the long life building of social change through equity and justice. I am very proud of you, Nkaziri, and really, really honored to have met you and continue doing the good work that you're doing. I think you're a blessing to many. So allow me to also introduce the speaker of the day. Her name is Joyce Wangara with an I, not an E, Wangara Ngoge. She is a consulting psychologist and research mentor with over 15 years experience in employee assistance programs. She delivers pragmatic, insightful, and transformational strategies to get out of the grip of toxic relationships at work. Her profile can be found at www.wangare.africa. She runs a platform of over 1,200 members called MHPSS. Opportunities where she posts mental health and psychosocial support jobs, internships, scholarships, and other opportunities every day. She also offers individual and group career mentorship and talks as a career strategist. She has worked in employee assistance programs offering mental health and substance use counseling, organizational leadership trainings, separation counseling, as well as compassion and well-being programs. In particular, she uses creative art therapies to invite abundance thinking, connecting with others, and allowing and accepting uncertainty by embodying non-linear time, incorporating the body into our way of being and not being stuck with rationality and productivity in quotes. So for the HR professionals who are here and you are wondering who to get in touch with for your employee wellness programs, I know this is what we are doing this year. So a lot of our focus is on employee wellness. So if you're looking for somebody, I'm sure you'll be wowed after this, and you can always reach out to me and I'll send Wangare right out to you. So Wangare, tell us, how do we really manage these toxic workplaces?
Thank you so much, Grace Nzula, for the gracious introduction. And yes, the deaf is a positive word, and our sign language interpreter does work with the deaf people. And I'm so happy that you could allow us to join your platform. I've always wanted to be on your platform, and this is a privilege today. So happy Madaraka Day. What does the word Madaraka mean? For those of you who may not know Swahili, Madaraka is a Swahili word which means freedom, sovereignty, liberty. So today we reflect on the struggle of those who served in our liberation. Our freedom as a nation comes down to the citizens. So sovereignty means self-governance or independence, self-rule or autonomy. However, in my view, it is not only at the national level that we are free, but also at the community and at the individual level. So my first reflection question to you is, would you say you are free? Are you free indeed? This is a great day to reflect on your work-life balance or imbalance and your mid-year career goals. I believe that most of you joining us here today are either employees or you are entrepreneurs and employers. In that case, you have sat on both sides of the interview table. This workshop was designed in response to the high toxicity in the workplace. We've had many incidences and stories lately, and there's a lot of stress and fatigue amongst workers, particularly now during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I asked you whether you are free. Are you free indeed? My next question is, are you working from home or are you living at work? A lot of you now have your offices in the home. So again, I ask, are you working from home or are you living from your workplace? Which is which? The intention of this workshop is to open up a dialogue about different practical ways that you can respond to toxicity in the workplace. But of course, the first place to start is to define a toxic workplace. A toxic workplace is a workplace that is marked by significant infighting, where personal battles often harm productivity. Not all jobs are toxic. There are bad jobs and toxic jobs. However, toxicity is experienced differently by different people. So you may have the same thing that may be toxic to one person, but may not be toxic to another person. So today, I hope to give you some tips. Please take them as merely suggestions or questions for you to reflect on, so you can apply them to your context. Remember, we said every one of our contexts is uniquely different. Overall, I'd like you to become more mindful, trust the process. COVID-19, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's also a lot more technology in our lifestyle. And where does toxicity really come from? The 6 systems are at the foundation of toxic workplaces. In our world today, when you work hard, you are rewarded by being added more work. But how can you be healthy under very toxic overload? And why should you slow down while the world is going very fast? So I would dare suggest, for the sake of your productivity, you may need to slow down and enjoy life. Set lower expectations. We are all in a global pandemic. And mistakes are just human. So forgiving yourself and slowing down and stopping shaming yourself is important. So I would say there are 3 steps to managing or better overcoming a toxic workplace. One is develop or restore your self-worth. So a lot of times our self-confidence is beaten down when we're in a place with a lot of infighting and battles. So we need to restore our self-confidence or self-worth. And then we need to create some habits or rituals that will sustain us. For example, what you can do to be refreshed, to be re-energized, to be rested. Those are some things that we will be talking about. And then thirdly, we need to build community. So a lot of abuse, a lot of toxicity thrives in isolation. And workplace bullying is part of toxicity. So community building is really, really important. We know now that time is very divided and we are forced to be very productive. And that's the reason why we sign contracts and we have to control how we spend our time. So do you ever feel guilty when you slow down? If you have to do less work than the workload that is assigned, do you negotiate? So I'd like you to begin to center your own body and your self-care. It is not lazy to slow down. So now I invite you to please type in the chat, how have you ever risen above a toxic work environment? How have you ever risen above a toxic work environment? I'd like to hear from maybe only one person because of time, because we'll have more time to discuss at the end. I just would like you, Nzula, kindly read for me one response. How have you ever risen above a toxic work environment? So
My good friend Jean is saying, sadly, I left. Wilfred says, walk away. Jacinta says, by starting my day with the gym. Peter Charlo says he resigned. Al Mohammed says, maintain a positive attitude. Kaya says, how does one recognize that they are actually in a toxic environment? Wanyingo says, I resigned, I switched off, unfortunately resigned, I changed department, separating myself from the staff targeting me, ignore toxic people. This is one current one. I will soon resign.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
By not, and Ali says, by not engaging, but I'm actively looking for a new opportunity. Most people have resigned, others joined the gym. For your health and well-being, I just leave. Keeping myself busy at work, an opportunity presented itself and I grabbed it. By minding my own business, keeping it a bit slow, I ignored it and moved on and chose other activities. The other one went to studies. Wow, yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'm getting that a lot of people resigned and a few looked for ways to cope within the toxic environment.
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, we've all had brutal bosses, poisonous people, soul crushing cultures. And so you're not alone. And today there are unattainable expectations. There's emotional and sexual harassment. There's demands to do more with less resources. And employees are left overworked, underpaid, insecure, and out of options. In Swahili, we say, kazi bila mshahara. It's too much work and too little money. So must you continue to put up with poisonous people, or can you rise above it? So today's talk is to really encourage you. You do have options. Unless, of course, you're a slave or a prisoner, which I don't think we are talking about here. We are talking about you being a full citizen. I do know it's quite complex. It's easier said than done to say to leave. But we know that workers across the board, even those in, say, the uniformed forces or in places where living is a protocol, that is actually an option. But I'm not also saying that in all cases you have to leave. I think what I'm saying is that we all know there are some implicit agreements at your workplace, some values that should always be there. For example, quality, trust, accountability, communication. These things matter. A few years ago, you probably saw this big campaign online called Pay Interns Now, where a lot of companies were perpetually engaging interns for free. These interns contribute to the bottom line, and they were not receiving any remuneration. After 3 months or 6 months, the companies would take out these interns and bring in a new group of interns. The problem with those who spoke up is that they were in trouble. They were blacklisted. They were challenging the system until finally there was a systemic change. There's actually now a law that protects interns. So there has been a lot of impunity because we are in a hyper-capitalist money economy. And there is a need to shift the system to put the human being at the center. We also now have a very toxic online environment whereby with anonymity, anybody can post anything at any time. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories going around, misinformation. There's competition amongst companies, but also inside of a company amongst individuals. And so you find there's a lot of hate online. There's moral panic. Companies worried about their reputation and how they're being seen by all the social media trolls, you know? And then there's a lot of tribalism, racism, unfair competition. Then you have a lot of people on very short contracts that directly affects their mental health because they do not have any job security. Some don't even have any contract, leave alone a short contract. And there's these extra duties always at the bottom of the contract written, any other business. So in other words, you're going to be called to do any extra duties. And some of those duties are really not within the job description. We all want a good job. So how may you thrive and flourish, or at least have hope for getting a better job? How can you overcome this toxicity and become a solution? Can you always choose to live while we know that your personal welfare and your professional welfare are actually intertwined? Your family and friends may sometimes give you the wrong advice. They want you to stay because of the convenience of the big salary they can benefit from you directly, So for example, is it possible to have a toxic workplace, even with a big salary? Some people have really big jobs, a lot of money, but they have no off work hours. They are supposed to work from Monday to Sunday throughout. Some people also are working jobs where there are many gender expectations. For example, is it only the ladies who are supposed to serve tea for the rest of the colleagues? So some of these activities may be seen as toxic by some people, but not toxic by other people. So the question begs, which part of this toxicity is perception and which one is reality? The thing that I would like to challenge all of us to do is to start with a self-check. Do I have any toxic workplace behaviors? So it's up to you. It's your responsibility to stop the hate. It doesn't matter the source of the hate, but for you to perpetuate the hate or to revenge or to fight back continues the hate. So while many people can advise you on what to do, you've got to look at two things: your personal values and your leadership style. So it is good to ask family and friends for advice. This is what we call reality testing. You ask them, na hii kitu unaonaje? So in other words, what do you think about this? But at the end of the day, you get to choose because most contracts are written as an individual. The problem with toxic workplaces is that the poison spreads to your entire life. Many workers are now overworking because maybe their boss shouted at them and they're trying to cope up with the emotional demands as well as the work demands. And so that creates a vicious cycle. You are overworked, you're upset, you continue to overwork more. At the end, you're just wounded. There's constant bickering and even physical fights. I know of some workplaces where they say when they argue very loudly, it makes them more productive, in order to make a decision. So these are habitual patterns that some workplaces have. Have you ever walked into a workplace and there is no sense of life? There are no pictures on the wall, there are no flowers on the table, but more than that, there are lists upon lists of many rules on the walls. And if you enter into the workspace, many people are talking about you have to work hard from your job interview and every single day. A lot of this hard work is overemphasized. What I'd like to urge us all is to always listen to your gut feeling. This is called your instinct. This is your internal compass and your natural intelligence, your intuition. Your intuition can tell you whether the space where you are is a toxic workplace or not. It is actually recommended for companies to have verbal praise, moral support, a collegial atmosphere, mentoring. When you are stressed, people should pitch in. And these are usually unspoken rules, but many companies will not do that. If one worker is sick, they will basically just blame the worker for becoming sick. And so here in Africa, we say we don't get sick. But there's also another African proverb that goes, he who has the wallet has the agenda. Sometimes it's about the power, Some bosses only want profits at all costs, but they don't take care of people. It is very important for workplaces to communicate that the people's lives matter and the quality of their lives. The bosses can demonstrate this. A boss who walks out of the office at 5 p.m. is a good boss. They're just saying to everybody, you don't have to be killed by this work. So it starts from leadership. We say that a fish starts rotting from the head. So we need leaders who can verbally appreciate people and do some actions that encourage the workers. Sometimes it's not only verbal praise, but doing something to increase cohesiveness, collaboration, and the kind of atmosphere that we want to do, which is positivity and high vibe. So what are some signs of a toxic workplace? A few I've already mentioned. The place is stoic, it is cold, there is no connection, there's a lot of gossip. And you know, they say gossip is a participatory sport, okay? It's a participatory activity. There's a lot of disrespect, bickering, backbiting, reprimanding, open office, you know, somebody is not being called aside, they're being reprimanded in front of everybody. And then there's a lot of lack of transparency, persistent lack of communication. I'm not talking about the one email your boss forgot to send. No, I'm talking about deliberately withholding information over and over again, not trusting the people, taking credit and discounting your work, crazy hours, unpaid overwork. And then there's a lot of issues with incompetent leadership. So basically poor leadership. And some of these bad bosses may be actually having a mental health condition. For example, narcissism. That is when somebody thinks so highly of themselves and everybody else must massage their ego, all right? And so they give you demanding tasks and demoralizing assignments. There's a syndrome we call Stockholm Syndrome. And this is, in other words, a hostage situation. This word came from a story in history in Stockholm, where, you know, robbers entered a bank and actually took hostage. And so Stockholm Syndrome happens a lot with employees who are working under very bad bosses. What they do is they end up always fearing, and they are so intimidated that even if you ask that employee a neutral question like, what is your favorite color? They don't even want to answer. They're so scared to talk. So this is because they have learned how to become a hostage of a bad boss, and this has become a pattern. There's another phenomenon aside from Stockholm Syndrome called gaslighting. So for example, you've met all your KPIs, that is your key performance indicators, and all your annual targets are on course. But you meet your boss and he dismisses all your great work and overemphasizes a little error that you had in one report. So they will overemphasize that, oh, you are barely meeting expectations, you are such a failure. That is called gaslighting. And it's very common in our workplaces. It's more common than you think. So in this case, the boss is projecting their own sense of hate or jealousy towards you and making you look like you're a failure, while actually you're doing very well. Or probably they could be jealous that you're just about to take over their position because you've been a really good worker. So gaslighting and Stockholm Syndrome are very, very common. And then, of course, another sign you will see is high turnover. And then we have the very interesting thing of toxic masculinity or femininity. You know, the boys club that has to thrive at all costs. We know that some industries are male dominated, such as tech, but some industries are also female dominated, such as marketing. And you'll find in those boardrooms, some of the decisions are skewed against you only because of your gender. And that's a very unfortunate situation. We've seen a lot of media scandals recently just out of this problem of toxic masculinity and femininity. And then, of course, open discrimination and harassment. Those people who are vulnerable, maybe they have a physical disability or an emotional limitation, you know, they are blamed for being that way. And these things are mentioned in every meeting, you know, instead of the person being treated as a person first, not as their condition. So ultimately, the biggest sign of a toxic environment is how you feel in your gut. Remember, I talked about your intuition? You feel always anxious, depressed, you can't sleep, and you're dreading it. You're basically unhappy. Did you know that cardiologists often receive people who have cardiac arrests, usually on Monday morning at 9 a.m.? So a lot of workers really have a hard time they're feeling in order to go to, and actually the major signs of a toxic workplace. So some tips, remember, it has nothing to do with you. You're being undermined by somebody who is negative and insecure. So what you need to do is create, number two, create a positivity bubble. I just saw the other day that at Amazon, they now have self-care booths. It's a room or a little box where employees can enter and listen to their nice favorite music of their choice. So you might want to subscribe to some YouTube channels with motivational talks or a podcast that you can listen to, whether online or offline. You need to create that positivity around you all the time. And then number three, set boundaries, both physical boundaries and emotional boundaries. It may require some assertiveness skills training. I do a lot of training on helping people rehearse some responses. That is because we know that when you're traumatized or when you're in a toxic environment, you may even wonder what to reply to somebody who is bullying you. And learning some assertiveness skills will go a long way. For example, if somebody keeps disturbing you and they're hovering over you, you could tell them something starting with, I feel that I feel that you're badgering me. I really feel the badgering, you know. You can say it starting with an I feel statement. In that way, you're not attacking the person, but you're standing your ground. You're telling them to stop being such a bully. All right. Then decline the drama. This is tip number 4. Decline the drama. Avoid gossip. Bring empathy and compassion and forgiveness always. Now, remember, forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation and holding your hands and singing Kumbaya. It doesn't mean you always have to be in the space of the person who is offending you, but forgiving them is just giving them the, you know, foregoing, revenging to them. And then, of course, separate your work and life. Get some after work hobbies. You need to return your energy, shift the dial on your mood. You can do a shower. And did you know that a 10-minute call, a voice call that is only 10 minutes can actually help you feel better? So I'd like you to practice this the next time you're really feeling down. Think of a friend who you are very fond of and who will always have your back, and schedule them, ask them that you call them for 10 minutes. And I promise you, after that phone call, you'll much more. Whatever it is that made you stressed will be more workable. So remember this, you are awesome, all right? So we can rise up environments. Also need to detect the toxic patterns that we have had over time, as I said earlier. Sometimes the patterns of toxicity stay with us, and we might develop something like mistrusting any person who asks us any neutral question or nice question, all right? So you want to check out for that, so that when things are back to normal and you're out of the toxic environment, you do not continue the toxic patterns. So when you look at your leadership styles, then you can tell when there is a misaligned or conflicting needs. So maybe you're an introvert, and the problem with your workplace is you are working in an open plan office where everybody could say hello at any time and they were really interfering with your work. Introverts work best alone, on their own. So you want to keep checking what you need in any space where you're working. Sometimes people ask me, is it me? Is it me who was the problem of the toxicity? So again, back to the question, is this a perception or is this reality? So since we've said you are awesome, you are limitless in potential, remember that you are valued in who you are, not in your performance. The problem with toxic workplaces is you are only regarded according to your performance. That smashes a lot of people's confidence. And we know in the US, for example, only 3 in 10 adults have healthy self-esteem. So 7 out of 10 of most connected to your job. You are just who you are. And try and be generous, be radically generous, encourage other people. Instead of backstabbing them, accept other people also, all right? Give people verbal praise, appreciation, affirmation, approval, acknowledgement, recognition, validation. Leave people feeling great about themselves, and always separate the person from the performance, okay? So it's very different degrading somebody as a failure and talking about performance, all right? So those are two separate things. We need to separate those two things. So in summary, there are 4 potential solutions. The first one is, of course, you can leave or get out. Number 2, you can choose who you interact with. So you can audit or filter or sieve, you know, you don't have to stick around the negative people for so long. So that's number 2. Number 3, you can separate your work from your home. And, you know, before you get home, you can pass by a counselor's office or a good friend, or you can do, you know, something pleasurable. Just separate work from home. And then number 4, increase your leadership. Remember that in life, it's not what you do, it's not what happens to you, but what you do with what happens that's important. So your response should be like the leader that you wish you had, okay? So speak truth to power, be warm with people, hold the door, you know, refill the coffee, replace the tissue in the loo, you know, hold people's chairs for them to sit down. And obviously, self-care is a lifesaver. I cannot emphasize this enough. Take a walk, meditate, pray, keep your eyes open for new opportunities, apply for jobs, you know? And it's a good idea to apply while you're still inside that job, so that your chances of getting into a new job while you still have this other one will ensure a smooth transition. So you need to find people around you who are positive. If all you have is toxicity, then you will be toxic too. So develop affirmation sentences and put them on sticker labels where it's visible, like on your computer, on your phone. Remind yourself these things, especially on difficult days. It's okay to increase your self-care, especially on difficult days. Write a journal. Journaling is a very important skill. I always recommend to other people, to most people to do. And be reasonable with your time, your boundaries. Boundaries include time, space, you know, keeping your home sacred. You leave work when it's time to leave, whether or not you have finished the work, because the work will always be there. You'll come back tomorrow and you'll find work. And then, of course, keep communication open, but refrain from gossip. So make sure you detox your work corner. Everybody should know when they come to your corner, they're not coming to gossip. This should be very clear with your workmates so that you maintain a healthy work environment. So I think with that, I think I can open up for questions. I had already, I had a few slides to share. Maybe I can only share one in the interest of time. I just want to show, it will be available for you as well. Just want to show you a few of what I've been saying. There's a profile called the DISC profile, which is alongside other tests. So this is one example of how a counselor would help you, all right? So this is a DISC profile, which is, you can think of DNA. So it has 4 aspects of personality. And you want to ask yourself, are you the dominant? Are you influence? Are you compliance? And steadiness. So dominance is about how much in your personality, your mind, and you're independent minded. Influence is this idea of being a magnet, a social magnet, being charismatic, you know. Compliance is how much do you adhere to rules. And steadiness is about, are you a reliable, consistent person that other people can depend on. So this is just one of the tools that we use in counseling, and you can see the descriptions there. And I'm saying that this is used alongside other tests. So although it is found online, I would recommend that you do it inside a counseling session, because once you understand your personality type, then you can begin to be better with other people, because now you understand the things that you value and the things that you prefer to have in your workplace. I think that's it. These slides will be available for you, and I think I'll open it up now for questions. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Joyce, the energy, the information. Oh, my God. We are soaking in so much wisdom, and thank you for this. As always, this session is brought to you by Balcon Housing and Stallion Construction Limited, obviously with Atara Solutions, which is I and my team who are all here. And I'm seeing a few questions, quite a number of questions that were streaming in as you spoke. And there's one that came from an HR professional who says that, I'm just trying to go back to it. What do I do? It's a trend of quitting. Okay. So, where is that question? Okay. So Esther is saying, I worked in an environment where the working environment suddenly turned toxic to all staff. And as the head of HR, I was left paralyzed. I didn't know how to manage the situation moving forward. Question, how can HR managers help employees to manage workplace toxicity?
That's a really, really good question from Esther. And you are the head of HR. I must say that the first thing that employees are dealing with at that point is burnout. You know, burnout is now recognized as an occupational hazard by the WHO. So the World Health Organization has recently recognized burnout. So I would say that, of course, you know that your human capital is the greatest asset. Everything else is second. And the energy levels of the team that you're serving or that work under you is actually compromised. So mapping out a strategy to include a psychologist or a career strategist or a counselor for an employee assistance program would be a really good decision. And as a HR manager, you can channel some funds for even a team building. I've been to many team buildings of many companies. And you see, people just need space to be listened to and to be heard. A lot of times you'll hear employees, as the HR, you'll hear employees say, we just want money and good terms. But actually, sometimes it's non-monetary. Some people just need to be listened to. So you can give them the gift of being radically generous with time, you know. And I know it's easier said than done. Sometimes companies have conflicting priorities and may never even have team building as one of the things they do. But even just a session, you know, with a trained psychologist and getting the organizational pain processed collectively is very important. Sometimes HR professionals fear that because they say, you know, now we are going to be dwelling on the negative while the work is still not being done. But actually, allowing space even for the so-called complaints is okay, because you cannot expect the team to grow, you know, without that space of talking. And instead of the high turnover and having a lot of people just stop renewing their contracts, it's better to handle problems head on and to know that there's always a group effect. Sometimes, you know, employees will also peer pressure each other, and, you know, some of this might also, you know, spill over. So you want to avoid that by having a conversation with everyone. So that's my perspective on that, Esther. I hope it was useful.
I believe it was. I'm trying to get a hold of the questions. Okay, there's one that came in before the webinar we received yesterday. What can I do to pep up my zeal when I feel burnt out after working in the same place and job situation for a long time and the prospects of growth seem unavailable?
Wow, the burnout question has come up again. So is of how healthy you are and how much you are prioritizing yourself or not. So while work is competitive and it is human for you to compare yourself unfavorably to others. It's a very human thing. We always, when we compare ourselves, we see ourselves as worse than others. But actually, there's nothing worth sacrificing your mental and physical health. So, Jad, Chara, I know that you feel like you've been stuck in the same place for a long time and there are growth. But again, if you visited a session with a career strategist, a career mentor, a psychologist, your zeal, your zest, your energy, your enthusiasm, if you can map out your career at where you began losing enthusiasm, and now you can decide whether to leave, negotiate a change of contract. You know, it's not always about leaving. You can negotiate maybe a higher salary or less duties, maybe move from full-time to part-time. And also you can increase your hobbies outside work. You know, one of the things I did recently, so better. So you want to have appropriate self-care so that this burnout, you can actually resolve it. In that way, you'll be able to see your next step of your career growth.
All right, all right. Let's take a question from Ruth. She says that she's a school admin and an office assistant, but every day they are quarreled by their boss, who claims that they are doing nothing. And from what she observes, they have done a lot and brought in changes in the office. She's very frightened and even sharing any good thing in her life because of the venom she feels in her towards the boss feels towards her, because she might send me out of the gate as she always threatens.
Wow. Unfortunately, most companies confuse being busy with being productive. Again, I mentioned we are in a hyper-capitalist society where profits seem to be more important than human relations. And it's important to see the human being as more important. To be in such an environment rude. And while you're being quarreled, you might want to begin to ask yourself, it's very different to have the virtues of patience and humility. Okay. Something called assertiveness, skills training. So being humble and being patient is not the same as being a doormat and being passive, all right? So you want to begin to see what you can pre-rehearse as a response that will calm you, something you can tell yourself, and possibly even, especially if you can talk to your boss, something that you can say that will buffer you from the possible trauma, because those are the beginnings of trauma, and trauma is a serious condition. So right now, what you're talking about is blackmail and gaslighting, because being threatened to be put outside the gate it can actually happen. But as you say, it is venom. She has not actualized her threat, but she keeps retorting, it seems you don't want to work here. I can put you out of the gate. And at that time, your in-tray is flooded. You're so big, you feel like you're doing the work. So you can still maintain being cordial and in good spirits and being calm, but actually standing your ground. So you might want to think about which statements. Remember, nowadays, you can go online and find videos on practically anything. But I'd like you to rehearse a statement that would be good for you, for your own self-talk, and for what you can respond that is assertive. For instance, I would say, if I'm the office assistant or admin, I would say, I believe I've done everything I if there's anything else that I can also do. So you see, you're not being aggressive. So assertiveness is a very important skill. And I think that at that point, that might assist you. Let me know if that helps.
Okay, we have quite a lot of questions on gaslighting and toxic bosses, but there's one that is really I've picked out, and it must be heavy. I can empathize on the person who's asked. She's saying her workplace and home are both toxic. How does she move?
Yeah, that is really, really, really sad. Gaslighting is very common, and a gaslighter is basically a negative manager or a scheming coworker, just somebody who's prejudiced, or a disgruntled, even a client can be a gaslighter, or even a competitor. So workplace gaslighting is you're being told something is like that, but it's really not that, okay? And it's the result of the systemic bias or the systemic challenges or the foundation I talked about earlier, that we're in a very high. And so for you, at home and at work is all toxic, you will still find communities, whether online or physical, where you can actually practice actively giving yourself compassion and forgiveness, all right? So in other words, be easy on yourself, So it is really important for you to remember help out there, even if it's toxic at work, it's toxic at home, and you don't know where it is where you can survive. A lot of us feel trapped in that way. But remember, if you only, I like to put it this way, just for your exaggeration, that if you stood on the mountaintop and shouted, somebody somewhere will listen. So keep reaching out. There are toll-free counseling services at no cost. You can call any time of day or night. For example, Red Cross 1199. These are some numbers you can call anonymously. Even if your line got cut, they'll call you right back. And you want towards yourself, even if around you it's very hostile. So just always remember there's somebody out there who cares. You just need to locate them. I hope that helps.
That does. Allow me to ask a question that came, I think the day before yesterday. Someone from the short stature who was saying, can your body, how you're created, have an effect on your mental health, even as you interact with people in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And people of short stature will suffer mental health problems, not because of the way they were created, but mostly because of societal oppression. So we say in disability, I'm a disability expert, and we say the oppression and the discrimination towards people in disabilities, even in the workplace, is really because of the barriers in the environment. For example, I'm a tall chair. And if a person with short stature was to sit on this chair, they would not be able to reach anything. So we have a lot of workspaces who will demean people for being of short stature. They will insult them. They will harass them. I've dealt with a lot of cases of even sexual abuse, And I suggest that you raise that. If that happens, you need to belong to a professional association, a trade on work group. This one will make it easier for you to get justice if any of these things happen. A lot of organizations now know there's a new law, for example, in Kenya, organizations need to have 5% of their work people. A lot of companies will not employ people with disabilities. They see them as an inconvenience. So remember, it is your responsibility to respond respectfully, but you do not have to sit there and be, the victim of abuse.
Okay. I think you will, allow me to just recognize the people who made this happen. This session is brought to you by Balcon Atara Solutions in partnership with Balcon Housing and Stallion Construction Limited. And allow me to also recognize the presence of our sign language interpreter and Kaziri Eid. She's over here doing what she does best. And thank you for being available today. I think you are reaching out to more people, and this conversation has got to keep going. And I think the way to start changing the world is by talking about stuff. So thank you very much for being with us. There are a few questions for those people who have been, I've seen like 7 questions on gossip in the workplace. Yeah, colleagues gossiping. I've seen Jocelyn, I've seen like 5 other people talking about gossip. But so how do you deal with gossip in the workplaces, and especially when it's affecting you? Sometimes you really don't want to walk in a room and people go quiet.
Yes, that's a good question. So gossip is one unhelpful habit or a toxic pattern. especially for people who experience toxicity on a continuous basis. And you want to deal with your being distrustful. Maybe you're being distrustful. Maybe you do not trust somebody. So instead of raising something directly with them, you are gossiping, you're backbiting them behind their back. You know, it's also very aggressive to gossip. Some people also do a lot of aggressive jokes and, you know, the kind of jokes that are belittling people, you know. So be alert to your own personality weaknesses, your sensitivities. But I'd like all of us to practice telling people politely if you choose not to continue a conversation. Remember, you don't have to answer every question. You know, gossip is juicy, you know, and sometimes you want to participate in the gossip to maybe feel like, I said you can politely decline to answer a question if it's going to lead to gossiping. Remember, every person has their right to be there. Even those who are doing something that is hurtful, there are others who are doing very toxic behavior, but you want to give yourself the freedom to allow yourself to trust somebody, then go up to them and talk to them directly, okay? So sometimes you gossip because you're fearing your boss, so you want to talk about your boss to everybody else, but that is actually displacement. You're displacing the whole conversation. It's not going to resolve anything immediately. So being responsible of how your message is being delivered is very, very important. As well, if you go to counseling, you might want to see what is underlying the gossip. Maybe you are angry. Maybe it's the anger that you need to deal with. And anger is one of the emotions that signals you to start doing your self-care. I talked about self-care. So you need to deal with your anger rather than gossiping and being jealous, all of these unhelpful habits. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to see whether the audience on Facebook has any questions. Just 1 second. Okay, that one is no question there. So our people, somebody is asking, where can I find this recording? We will upload it on our YouTube channel. I've put up the link on the chat. We also have another question, which probably is our second last. How do you, okay, this thing of bosses who don't listen, how do you correct them?
Aha, thank you for that question. There are also bosses who shout at their employees, you know, and that is quite offensive. A boss who does not listen actually is communicating that these employees are trivial, they're not important, and respect that person. If you can, weighing everything, if you think it's appropriate, you can request a meeting just to talk about how you can communicate better. Sometimes bosses may not ever give you such an opportunity, but if they do, it's really important to begin from a space of appreciation. So if you go in attacking somebody, what usually do, they pull their defenses up. So you want to avoid that by really beginning with fostering appreciation and asking them to, you know, just tell you a little bit about how else the conflicts can be resolved without necessarily this non-listening and this shouting, all right? So many employees report that it makes them more after they've had a conversation with their bosses on how to work better, all right? So try to create a space, and if you cannot do it directly, if you feel completely intimidated, you can always use a different person to have that. So this would not be considered gossiping. This is a leadership style where you can have somebody else in the room. For example, a counselor, you can have a mediator, an arbitrator, a HR. That person, the third person is the third party in the room who mediates that conflict. And therefore now you can speak up when it is safe to do so. It's really important to speak up when it is do so. If not, if you cannot completely get your boss to listen to you, you've got to evaluate your choice, if it's still a good choice to continue being in such a space.
Excellent, excellent. Regina Bundi, please get in touch with me. I can see you have asked a HR question. Allow us not to ask it here because Joyce is a mental health specialist. Please get in touch with me. I think you have my email. get in touch with me and we'll help you navigate your current situation. So there was another question I wanted to ask. There's a question from people who are in the hospitality, not hospitality, hospitals, and the situation is getting, there's stigma from COVID. There's also the fact that you can lose a patient, and at the same time there's the usual normal toxic environment where the boss is mean to you, your colleagues don't want to be to work as a team. So some people are left to do more than others. So how does this person keep it sane?
Yeah, my heart goes out to you who is a healthcare worker, especially at this time. We are actually inside a crisis. And in a crisis, the decisions that are made are not sometimes the usual decisions that you're used to. So I really, really feel for all of us here who are working in healthcare spaces. Again, you want to find a space for yourself. You may not have even a workplace booth like they do at Amazon, but you want to space for yourself. And you want to take breaks, even if everything is going round and round and there doesn't seem to be any break in sight. You want to give yourself space. The reason is you're human. And you want to make sure that you are motivated at your workplace. Sometimes the work can be so much that there's no more energy, you know. And if you take a short break, a short nap, I've seen a lot of healthcare workers, attempting to, take leave, and their colleagues don't want to give them any more space to rest because the work is unending. It's just a lot. Again, still, you can still initiate your self-care using your phone, having some apps on your phone. There's a wonderful app called Calm, which is a free app. Apps nowadays that you can download that are free, that give you just some headspace. There's even another one called Headspace. A space just to relax, even if it's for 30 seconds or 30 minutes in the middle of your day. But my take for healthcare workers is small self-care rituals will help you. So remember, we talked about rituals earlier. So you want to use those short breaks as much as possible and increase your self-care. Do not decrease. Increase what you need to do. If it's prayer, if it's singing, if it's calling somebody, if it's going out and taking a cup of coffee, whatever you need to do to be okay. So you want to increase that, not decrease it.
Okay, and then there's one question from somebody in the US who is saying that how do you deal when you feel like all your colleagues are being paid more, yet she feels racially discriminated because her colleagues earn more than she does. She was told that she has no degree, then she has acquired it and still nothing has changed. So maybe we can take that as the last question.
Yeah, racism, and in Kenya, locally, tribalism is real. There are a lot of attributions from our bosses according to where we come from or our skin color, which is unfortunate. You want to pursue the conversation, and you want to check out YouTube videos also online on negotiation. So you actually can seal a deal, especially elsewhere or in the same company, if you can fortify yourself with, an argument for yourself to be promoted. So you want to book an appointment and you want to see whether you can actually convince whoever needs to be convinced, I don't know, the board or your employer. And always asking for a pay raise is not a bad thing. It's how you ask it that matters. Meanwhile, you want to look for another job if that's a possibility, while you still have your current source of income in that job, so that you have a smooth transition should you. I wish you well, and I think that it can be creative, respectfully floated to your boss.
There's somebody who is commenting, or is it a question? Can KPIs, where is that question? Can clear KPIs help reduce conflict in the workplace?
Oh, yes. Communication is really critical. Communication expresses care, connectedness, and some companies are just good communicators, some are horrible. Unclear work roles and contracts that keep shifting and working without knowing how much money that is worth are some of the toxicity signs of workplaces. And it's really important, if you are the employer, to really create clear expectations on performance. I know, like in Kenya, our culture is more salient. We don't like to speak explicitly about many things, and we don't often sign contracts at workplaces. But you get to see the contract when a problem arises. So it's always good to have a contract from the word go if you're managing somebody, and have those details really, really well spelled out. That's a really good point. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Allow us, it's 9:08. Somebody is saying, but I want to appreciate the discussion. Thank you very much for making the time. Collins Wailatit, what is your view on grapevine? I think she has answered that question. So it is 9:08. Allow us to just say, thank you. And before you leave next week, by the way, we have an exciting speaker who will be talking to us about the courage to reinvent yourself. Have you lost your job? Do you want to change? Do you want to just begin a new leaf? So we are having the author, actually, let me just spill the beans. The author of Sacked, So What is our next guest speaker next week on the 8th. So keep it here. Thank you very much, Wangare. That was such an exciting and informative session. I am still soaking in it, and I'm sure most of us, we are going to go back on YouTube and we are going to listen. This session was actually live on YouTube and Facebook, courtesy of Graphics Media. So asante sana Wangare, thank you, we've learned a lot. Thank you Nkasiri. I am loving the work you're doing, honestly, and I hope we can engage you some other time. So Wangare has put her email address there. However, when we share the slides, because we're going to share it to your emails with the link to the recording, you can actually get in touch with her. And in case you need any other, more urgent assistance from Wangare, you can always reach out to me and I'll be able to put you through or put you in touch with her. So thank you, Balcon Housing and Stallion Construction Limited for enabling this to happen. Thank you, Kapula Mintito and Graphics Broadcast Media for your partnership. Our audience, thank you. We wouldn't do this without you. So thank you for sacrificing your Madaraka Day and being with us. And I hope you've learned something and you have left this, you're leaving this webinar with a lesson or two. Thank you very much. My name is Grace Nzula. I am a trainer and HR consultant with Atara Solutions. And as always, I am your host. Please like our Facebook page, Atara Solutions. Follow us on Instagram, Atara Solutions. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, Get It Right with Atara Solutions. By the way, this program is called Get It Right with Atara Solutions. And I hope you have gotten it right today. See you next week, same time, same place, as we look at the courage to reinvent yourself. By the way, we're also going to be covering personalities in July with one of the best personality experts we have in this country. So we have season 2, I told you guys, is lit. So thank you, and have yourself a lovely night.